So how many times can one episode actually say the word destroy? Hello everyone and welcome to another Rant episode. Of course everyone knows I'm Archer 9234. Today I'm going to discuss Power Rangers in Space episode 25, Always a Chance. Episode 25, Always a Chance is adapting Mega Ranger episode number 4. This is actually very early on in the Mega Ranger episode season. The reason why they must have picked it because it was an episode they didn't choose, and since they were not following the Super Sentai episode at all in any way, except for the minor plot points from using the monster. They used this episode because it wouldn't interfere with any other episode. Now, the only similarities between Mega Ranger episode 4 and Power Rangers in Space episode 25 is that the monster stole computer data, but he did it in a different way. In Mega Ranger, he stole specifically computer data, while in Space, he stole computer data and knowledge from the people. Other than that, the episodes do not follow anything at all. They're completely different from each other. The episode begins where the Rangers are attempting to find out who is attacking this computer's place. They didn't really go into it. And we find out that this monster can switch places with you from a person to another by just simply grabbing them with his tongue. So a fight breaks out, and the Rangers come outside and fight the monster. So unfortunately, the monster switches places with Cassie, and Carlos accidentally hits Cassie on her shoulder, injuring her. Now, this is the first time in PR history where we actually see a Ranger physically injure another Ranger. This has kind of happened before, but it wasn't involved in such a way to the main story. It was just a minor thing. And it only really involved Super Sentai footage. It was usually never in PR because, again, PR usually has a restriction due to censoring issues where a Ranger usually can't be seen hurt or injured in a really bad way. So basically, that's the reason why we usually don't see them hurt this way. But luckily enough, we got this really good episode where we actually saw the consequences of being a Ranger and what can actually go wrong. After the fight, and they return to the mega ship, Carlos meets up with Cassie and apologizes to her, and he feels very, very bad. We usually don't see this kind of moment between two Rangers and another. It's usually action-oriented PR, but in this special episode, that we got more of an interaction between characters. After Carlos returns back to Earth, Bulk, Skull, and the Professor are doing their usual shenanigans. I never liked this aspect of In Space. It turned Bulk and Skull and the Professor into completely plot points and useless characters. I mean, they're even more useless in Space than Bulk is in Samurai. I never liked this, and I was glad they kind of dropped them when they started Lost Galaxy, because it was like Bulk and Skull were just an afterthought, and the Professor even more of an afterthought. I really never liked this. So while Bulk and Skull and the Professor are fooling around their usual nonsense, the monster attacks them because they need because Astronomer needs additional data from the computer center, and only the Professor actually knows the information, so that he was going to steal his knowledge from his brain. Carlos shockingly hesitates to actually helping out Bulk and Skull, which is another first in a PR episode. And it was very odd, and it was also a very unique, realistic way of actually seeing it, because normally in Power Rangers, we never actually see this kind of responses. They're always, oh, I gotta help them, and they never hesitate. They don't care about the consequences. They don't care. They're risking their lives and risking the people they're trying to save. They just go and do it. Well, in this episode, we actually see that aspect where Carlos hesitates to the point where he doesn't want to do it, but then he knows, I have to do it because they're going to get killed. Now, when Carlos actually attacks the monster, when they switched over to the Japanese footage, this episode really stuck out. It stuck out the most in this episode. It had too many issues switching between the Japanese footage and American footage. Normally, by looking at the quality between Japan's film and the U.S. film that we use, so you can use it. But in this case, it stands out even more because the locations kind of switch around. There's more drums and stuff inside the Japanese footage, and there's smoke all over the place that just magically appears in this footage. So I really don't like how it just swaps over and back and forth. It's too abrupt. So after a couple of minutes of Carlos having a hard time trying to fight the monster, because again, he's still having it on his head where he can injure people, Adam comes in and saves the day. So Carlos has, of course, explained the situation with Adam with that he had injured Cassie's arm, and so Adam is trying to convince him that being a Power Ranger is very difficult. So Adam tries to train Carlos again to being a Ranger and trying to get him out of that mindset. This episode is very unique because Adam comes back without needing of an anniversary or a team-up special. The reason why this happened was because In Space was originally going to be the last season of Power Rangers. It was originally going to be canceled at this point because of the decrease in ratings from Zeo and the horrible issues with Turbo. Saban originally was going to end this series at this point. So to try to make up with it, they brought back Adam because he's friends with Koichi Sakamoto, who directed this episode. And it was easier for him to get a hold of, so he was brought back for just as a thank you to fans and everything, because this was originally going to be the end of the series. So Adam attempts to help out Carlos to try to overcome his issues with injuring his friends. It was a cool nod, though, when you see him do the training montage. It sort of felt like the Rocky movies. And the real cool thing was that when they brought back the traditional MMPR music, the rock feeling music throughout the scene, so it was a really great touch seeing them actually train, and you get a little bit of a background to like what goes on between a Ranger's lives. It's not always like, oh, they're perfect at everything. We were actually seeing them train, dealing with issues, and making you feel more like in the realistic world. As the training goes along, Carlos is really, really frustrated, and he actually gives up. This rarely ever happens in PR, because there's always that, even though it's kind of hard for a character, for example, Billy, he didn't know how to fight at all, but he always kept trying. But in this case, Carlos frankly just gave up, which is much more realistic than what any other PR has done. So Carlos gives up and leaves Adam. Adam and Alpha are very distraught because they don't really know what to do, and he doesn't know what to do because he sees it that Carlos is really not in a good circumstance where he's going to frankly give up on the team, and he knows it. And shockingly, Adam pulls out his power morpher. Now let me get into the situation with the power morpher. A couple people do get kind of confused, and there's some issues that are brought up with the power morpher because, for example, everyone always remembers what happened to the power coins back in the end of season 3. They were destroyed. Now a couple of people get confused. It's like, how can Adam have his power morpher? It doesn't make any sense. The reason why he has the power morpher is because this is the season 2 power morpher, the original Dino power morpher. They can't actually use the Season 3 power coins because they were destroyed, but they do still have the Season 2 power coins. The original Dino coins still exist, but they were damaged. That's the reason why Adam had brought the power morpher, because it was basically to show that Carlos, no matter how hard it is, it's going to be all right, because Adam has gone through this terrible ordeal where Lord Zed had almost nearly taken over the world. They lost their powers not once but 2 times, and they still got out of it. Now, technically, Adam could have brought his Zeonizer, but it wouldn't have shown that much of an impact because the Zeonizer still, assumingly, still functions and it still works like it normally should. It wouldn't have been a perfect example for it. So Adam brings it out, and Alpha's like, why do you have this? You shouldn't have this. This thing is badly damaged and it can kill you. So after a while, Carlos returns to the mega ship and actually gives up his communicator and his astral morpher to the team and is actually quitting the team. Everyone is in shock. No one really says much. TJ thinks it's a joke, and it's like, no, Carlos really can't trust himself to his reactions to what he's done with Cassie. I'm kind of like, I understand where he's coming from because he's injured a fellow Ranger, but Cassie was really all right with it. She knew it was a mistake. It wasn't his fault. It was the monster's fault. I think Carlos was going a little bit overboard in this circumstance. So after Carlos has given up his astral morpher and his communicator, he comes down back to Earth to tell Adam that he's quitting the Rangers. Now, unfortunately, that they were ambushed and they were being attacked. Now, since Carlos gave up his astral morpher and his communicator, they can't contact the other Rangers. Adam doesn't have a communicator, so he can't do it either. Carlos is totally outmatched, outnumbered, and he has no defense. So Adam has no other option and uses the original power morpher. Now, when they show Adam morph using the original season 2 morphing sequence, it was actually slightly different. They were using a different take of the morphing sequence because if you remember in season 2, Adam is just standing there and just saying Mastodon. But they're using a different version of it where he's actually opening the power morpher and saying Mastodon. Probably at some point in season 2 they must have filmed 2 different versions of the morphing sequence so that they can actually see them open it up. Because normally in MMP or season 1, 2, and 3 they simply just go behind their backs and then they morph. So I assume they probably shot 2 different versions to accommodate them actually opening it, and then one that just simply has them already opened. Now, the Black Ranger suit that was used in space was the original Black Ranger suit that was used back in MMPR. It's not ultra like the one that they use in Once a Ranger. The original Blade Blaster is the original correct sizing. They don't block out the back piece of the power morpher buckle connector, and the original helmet has the original locking latches outside. So it's the original suit used back in MMPR. So Adam is trying to hold off the enemies, but unfortunately due to the power morpher being severely damaged, it doesn't have that much power and is constantly being draining and injuring Adam at the same time. This is the first and only time we've actually seen a Ranger morph with a damaged morpher. Usually in a normal circumstance in all the other seasons of Power Rangers, when the morphers are damaged, they don't actually function. It's happened in Lost Galaxy, happened famously in Operation Overdrive. They actually just don't work. And this is the only time we actually see a person morph with a damaged power morpher, and you're seeing the consequences. The suit's failing, the suit's not functioning correctly, he doesn't have enough energy, and he can't use any of his weapons. So while Adam is trying and struggling to stop all the monsters, Carlos finally gets it that being a Ranger has its risks, and no matter what, you don't give up. He finally convinces himself to actually, this is the wrong thing I've done. I've risked Adam's life. I shouldn't have done this. I'm acting arrogant. I shouldn't have been like that. Luckily enough, the other Rangers finally arrive, and he finally says, like, no, I'm the Black Ranger, and he morphs, and he takes down the monster on his own. Overall, I thought this episode was excellent. I actually liked it more over than Countdown to Destruction because it's not just because Adam comes back and we have the MMPR suit being shown again. No, it's more than that. We got more of a backstory between all the characters, a more realistic world for this particular episode. And it was never like, stop the monster, blow it up, and that's it. So I particularly liked it for that reason. What do you guys think of this episode? Did you enjoy it because of Adam coming back? Did you think of it because it was like, well, it was a cool story for Carlos because he was usually never featured that much. It's usually Andros or TJ, and Carlos usually never gets that much of a focus episode. The one thing I particularly miss about the older PR seasons is that we got the preview for the next episodes and the bloopers. I always love this about PR. We're getting the previews of every next episode. We never had to rely on a stupid commercial that had to air either way later or it never got really in depth. So I really miss this aspect of PR, and I really wish they would bring it back. And I really wish they would bring back the bloopers. Again, leave your comments below of what you thought about this particular episode. Again, leave suggestions as well. I'll see you guys right back here next week. So the monster unfortunately switches places with Cassie. So Carlos unfortunately feels very distraught, again hurting Cassie. So Carlos explains the situation that he had injured Cassie's arm. My only complaint that I really didn't like about this episode is where we constantly keep hearing the word destroy. Destroy is the word that they always use to cover up the word kill. I never understood this. This was always happening in the mid to late 90s. I never liked it in any show. The worst show that this was happening was in Dragon Ball Z, the very first Ocean dub from Dragon Ball Z. They would always cover up the word kill with destroy or sending them to the next dimension. It just kills the moment. It's like you'll get destroyed by this power morpher. It's like he'll be killed. It's not destroyed, killed. It just brings it down. I never understood this, why this has to be censored. Kids understand about death. If you censor death, it doesn't make any sense to a kid. It's like it's a natural course of life. You have to know the consequences of being injured and stuff. It just never made sense to censor it from a child.